Parents with nanny cams. What have you caught your babysitter doing? Story 1. My friend's biological dad has 4 kids through another relationship and a dog, and my friend told me this story. The kids are a 13-year-old, a 6-year-old boy and girl, and a 2-year-old. They had to go out of town a lot, because my friend does swim, and always have their sister do it, because the 13-year-old liked to play with knives, but she was sick, so they hire a 24-year-old carer. Their resume was good, prior experience, good reviews, etc., so they hire them. When he shows up, he's 6'4", easily 240 lbs, and wearing an Abercrombie beanie, lidded shades, crucifix earring, Atari t-shirt, leather jacket, black and red athletic pants, and Vans. He introduces himself and is nice and polite with excellent etiquette. He begins listing all the things he can and is willing to do. The wife is still nervous though, as one would be, but they leave in an hour so they can't do anything. They have a couple of nanny cams set up, so Dad says it's fine, and they leave after introducing him to the kids and the dog, and giving him a short list of chores. They get back and he shakes their hand and leaves. They ask the eldest how it went, and he just says fine and goes back to playing video games. Similar response from the 6-year-olds. When they check the cams, they see this. He immediately starts doing the laundry, dishes, and setting out food for the dog. Then I'm going through this per child. He plays several different video games with the 13-year-old, and after some small talk finds out that he loves to play cards, so they play Texas Hold'em for like an hour. For the 6-year-olds, he brushes the girl's hair and helps her do makeup and lets her do his. He has a little sister who loves makeup too. And for the boy, he watches the Star Wars prequels with him and quotes memes. And finally plays with the baby for like hours, tosses her around and sings Schubert to her. To top it off, he gets McDonald's for everyone, and even slips the baby a few fries, and lets everyone play with the dog on the backyard. After putting the kids to bed, he lays on the couch with their Rottweiler, who usually hates strangers, and falls asleep watching Frasier reruns. They've hired him every time since, and always pay him triple his rate, $5.45 an hour. Story 2. I travel the U.S. for work, and am fortunate enough to be able to bring my 2 beagles with me. They have never been away from my side longer than the time I've been at work. They are 10 and 13. I have a camera that I use to check in on them sometimes, mostly because my larger beagle is quite the ingenious guy. Opening doors, scooting chairs over places so he can jump up onto the counters, etc., etc. Last year I was in Oregon and had to go home to Michigan for an emergency. I do not fly with them, I will only drive, so I was in a pickle and reluctantly hired someone off of Rover that was willing to come stay over at my hotel room for 3 days. She was great, kept up on texting me about the dogs, said things like, tossing them a ball right now. So I would check in via the cam when I thought it was appropriate. This woman was amazing. Not only was she playing with them enough to make them exhausted, she was even teaching them new tricks, making them use their brains to solve puzzles, and even got my 42-pound beagle to get up on her back so she could do push-ups. She was an avid CrossFitter. I was extremely happy. Story 3. Wow, a question I can actually answer. Less than a month ago, my coworker was notified that his child was crying. I guess his cams are some high-tech cry-detecting shit. One of his nannies said nothing had happened, so he checked the cam, which he showed us during lunch. The nanny, recently hired, was just chillin' with his 3-year-old and 1-year-old. When the 1-year-old got close to the edge of the bed, the sitter just sat there watching, while the kid slowly crawled closer and closer towards the abyss. She did nothing, and the kid fell pretty hard. Surprise, surprise. My coworker questioned the nanny again. Who knew there were cameras? And she denied being responsible for the fall. He told her to pack up her things and leave. It was pretty cringe, watching her just look at the kid get hurt. Like any human would instinctually know danger was approaching. Story 4. Ours caught our nanny stealing money from our vacation fund. She also left our 9-month-old sitting on the counter as she walked away. Later that day, it caught a phone call about buying how much, the dealer's name, and a bunch of other stuff. Turns out she had cleared out our 4-year-old's piggy bank of $115, took money and gift cards from my wife's purse, stole my gold wedding ring, I wear a silicone one most days, and a bottle of hydrocodone. I provided the evidence to the police, and she was caught. She was found guilty in January. She had only worked for us for a few weeks. Story 5. My family bought one to see our dogs when we leave on vacation twice a year. It's one where they can hear us, and we thought it would be great. We hardly used it. We also asked our maid to dog sit for us while we were out. Once when we looked at the feed, we saw the dog sitter there a solid 30 minutes early, just petting the dogs and playing with them. She's since retired from working, but she was the sweetest old lady and we love her. Another time, my dad left a wad of cash on top of the washing machine, about $600, and she put a rubber band around it with a note saying he misplaced it. Story 6. What did our nanny do? Oh boy. About 2 years ago, after our son was born with some breathing issues. He has a rare form of dwarfism and his airway is just smaller than most. We were issued a state-funded nursing. A nurse came at night to watch him overnight and make sure he was safe. At the time, he was very stable and really didn't need the nursing, but because he had a track tube, so you legally need the nursing. He had, at the time, a tracheotomy tube. He was a little over 4 months old at the time of this incident. One night, I heard his oxygen monitor beeping, which was not unusual since it frequently malfunctioned. We had been so tired from getting up all the time from the beeping and stupid crap that the nurses would frequently do, so I didn't hear it for quite a while. These were not highly trained nurses. We had been getting very little sleep for months. Very high stress. I walk in and the baby is royal blue and lifeless. An image I will never be able to erase from my brain. The oxygen monitor says 20% oxygen. Normal would be 95-100%. I yell to my wife, who happens to be a surgeon, and she rushes in, and we both start doing CPR on our kid. We call 911. The nurse is standing there, just kind of staring the whole time. She didn't call 911, she didn't call us. I didn't understand WTF just happened. We do CPR for 15 minutes. No sign of life. The EMT get there and do CPR for another 12 minutes. At the end of the 12 minutes, they get some small signs of life and rush him off to the ER. My wife hops in the back of the ambulance and continues to do life-saving measures for the whole ride. At the hospital, they call a code and do life-saving measures for another 2 hours. He was in and out. When I got to the hospital, they brought over the chaplain and asked us these of end-of-life questions. He survived the whole ordeal, but suffered significant right and left-sided brain damage. He is 3 now and making great progress, but I believe he will never be the same. He doesn't talk yet, but is getting close. He says a few words. He is a good kid. Only a few days prior to the incident set up cameras in the room because the nurses seemed a little unsafe, but I had no choice. Long story there. I went back and watched the recorded video. Here's what really happened. The nurse, either on purpose or by accident, had taken the nebulizer machine, an air mister, to blow medicine into your airway, and in an attempt to give him his breathing treatment, accidentally or on purpose, attached it directly to his airway, track. Meaning that instead of gently misting medicine into his airway, he had a strong burst of compressed air being forced into him. It punctured his lung, think a balloon being blown up and popping, and caused crepitus, air under the skin, and he was without oxygen for over 6 minutes. If it weren't for the nurse, he'd be fine. He was a stable kid who needed a little extra help in the beginning of his life to get to average. He was not a child on life support. His form of dwarfism is limiting, but oftentimes these kids have higher IQs than average, and we don't know why. Unfortunately, that won't be the case for him. If it weren't for my wife being a doctor and constantly saving lives, he'd be dead, without question. She is a professional life-saving master. I knew CPR, but she knew exactly what to do to save his life and not to quit. We had a few extra life-saving things like an ambu bag, and we were able to save his life because of that. We sued the nursing company and won, of course. The money goes into an account to provide services for him for the rest of his life. After we are gone, we want to make sure someone will take care of him. The nurse did not get her license revoked. She is still practicing. We tried to appeal to the nursing board, but that was the result. Story 7. My uncle told me this once when a babysitter was holding his daughter, my older cousin, when she was a baby. The baby was playing with her toys and she somehow swallowed a small piece of something, and the babysitter performed the Heimlich, but for babies. There's a version of that for babies. I don't know where I found it, though. She saved my cousin, and her family was thankful. They have no idea where the babysitter is now, but right now, she's supposed to be around her late 40s. I asked my uncle about this, and apparently they know where the babysitter is. She is in California, and she is a very well-paid doctor and makes over $310K a year. Physician. That's the only thing he knows since she left. Story 8. We have a nest in our kids' room and living dining. You can see partially into the kitchen from the living room cam, but not much. About the second week into using a new sitter, we catch her talking tons of shit about my wife and how she coddles our 18-mo-old son. bragged about how she was going to quit at the end of the day because she hates working for us and doesn't like our son. While she's in the kitchen, she puts him in his high chair and turns on an iPad for him to watch Elmo. No screen time allowed. He asks to get down and go play after a few minutes, and she says no. He starts to cry and she basically yells at him, "OMG, are you serious right now? You're so damn needy," so he cries harder. About 10 minutes later, she takes him back to his room where he calms down. I get home a few minutes later and send her on the way. Sitter: "You're home early. We had a rough morning, but we are feeling better now." Me: "Yeah? Hey, you know that camera in the living room is on all the time, and I can hear everything you say and do in the kitchen, right?" She kinda stuttered, and I told her to get the f***. Then me and my kid hung out all day and had a blast. The thing that got me was being mean to my son, like he's not even 2 yet. Story 9. I house dog sit for friends of my parents. The first time I did it, they mentioned they had a security camera by the front door that was motion activated, and I didn't really think anything of it. They were gone for a few weeks. They come home. Their 2 giant huskies are happy. I get paid, and all was well. A couple weeks later, my mom calls me laughing and laughing. My parents had dinner with the friends I dog sit for, and they showed a video to my parents from the front door cam. Apparently all it showed was me sprinting full speed down the hallway, a dog toy in hand, biggest stupid grin on my face, followed by the 2 huskies running and sliding after me, followed by me, followed by the huskies. Over and over and over and over again. I sit for them as often as I can. Story 10. Once, at the very last moment when no other babysitter was available, I hired one that as sort or notorious for not being good, not dangerous or anything like leaving the child unattended, but like the type where she would not console the child if they were crying, punish them for doing small things. While away I was very suspicious, so I continuously was glancing at the baby cam. The babysitter was playing with him, singing songs, and completely engaging him well beyond the way you would expect somebody who was considered a bad babysitter to act. Essentially what happened was, the babysitter got hired by a crazy parent who didn't like her at all, so they spread a bunch of mumbo-jumbo through the neighborhood. When I came home, I gave her a very large tip, and she was the one I always hired whenever I needed a babysitter. Story 11. This isn't something that I caught a babysitter doing, but I remember that I once saw on TV the case of some parents that went with her baby to the doctor because she cried a lot for apparently no reason. The doctor told them that she looked really stressed and asked them if they were doing something that could make her act like that. They didn't. Then the doctor and the parents noticed some really tiny dots in the girl's belly, and they had no idea where they came from. The babysitter told them that she had no idea, but they didn't believe her, and secretly put cameras to spy what she was doing. Turns out that she was crazy. She was sticking the baby with a needle from time to time, and doing things like shaking her cradle incredibly hard to torment her. Of course, they called the police, confronted her, and she got arrested. Story 12. My grandpa was staying with my parents, but they figured it best to hire the regular sitter to watch my younger siblings overnight, since they didn't think my grandpa was up to the task, and they were attending a wedding a couple hours away and made plans to spend the night in a hotel nearby. They had set up a nanny cam in a couple room, my siblings' bedroom, the master bedroom, living room, and kitchen, all motion activated. They normally wouldn't bother looking through the footage if everything seemed fine upon returning home, and their master bedroom cam had never been triggered before. When they returned, they noticed that the cam in the master bedroom had been triggered, so they decide to take a look, cut to footage of my grandpa and the sitter, both naked aggressively, making out from the entrance of the room staggering while intertwined towards the bed, and then about 20 minutes of banging on my parents' bed. The sitter was about 20 years old, and my grandpa was around 70 at the time. My dad called me immediately after he saw the footage laughing his ass off, and I could hear my mom crying in the background, completely mortified from what she had just witnessed and shouting at my dad to throw out the sheets and kick out Grandpa. My mom called the sitter to confront her, and she just apologized and said there was connection or some shit to that matter. When she asked my grandpa what he was thinking, he just said, "At my age, you must seize every opportunity." I wish there was audio for the build-up. I lay awake at night sometimes just wondering what kind of game my grandpa was talking to, getting that sitter's pants. Story 13. I have cameras all over the inside and outside of my house. It's standard with a Ring doorbell. Next came critter cams. I put near my bird feeders, then cameras everywhere. I used them mostly to look for the wild bunnies in my yard and to see the owl leave its roost at night. The indoor cameras are dog cameras. My wife and I use them to view and talk to our dogs while at work. The weirdest thing I've caught my dog doing? I had made a batch of jerky, put it in a large Ziploc bag, and place it in the dining room table in preparation for a camping trip. My 19-pound Shih Tzu, which is large for a Tzu, was caught on video moving a dining room chair, jumping up onto it, then jumping onto the table. He ate the entire bag of jerky, leaving only the bag. He did this in less than 10 minutes. Story 14. We have a security camera in my bedroom for my free roam bunny so we can keep an eye on her whilst on work, if we go on holiday ect. Well, my dad is 50 and is a big bloke who acts like he doesn't like pets came over to visit one day whilst I was out. He went in my room and crouched down calling the bunny. He spent an hour trying to pet the rabbit and kept repeating in a soft voice, "I'm not going to hurt you, I just want to pet you and see how fluffy you are." He just about shit himself when I spoke through the security camera to tell him she's very fluffy. Story 15. The family I nanny for told me that their previous nanny got caught doing loads of awful things. The couple that outraged me most were leaving their 3-year-old daughter in the tub with water up to her chest for 2 hours every day while she sat in another room unable to see said child. And once she went to run an errand with the same kid, and their doorbell camera caught her putting kid in car seat, not buckling her, and peeling off. The mom said you could see toddler trying to buckle herself in before they took off. The camera was not in the bathroom. It was where they were able to see where the nanny was, room near bathroom, and their kid, if the door was left open, which it always was while she was bathing. They thought she was a perfectly good nanny until their kid was saying weird things that were going on, and they decided to watch the footage. They fired her after seeing what she was doing, and that's where I, super nanny, came in. The cameras weren't actually for the nanny. They were for their kids' therapists, because she was prone to violent behavior, and they were trying to fix it, blah, blah, blah. Story 16. Not me, and not a babysitter, but my mum's friend was getting her house decorated by this painter. Since her and her husband would be at work all day, they put all the valuables in their bedroom and set up nanny cams around the room. Anyway, one day the husband gets this notification of movement from the cameras. He pulls up the footage, and this painter is in their bedroom. The painter proceeds to get fully undressed and lie in the middle of their bed and needless to say, the husband went straight home and fired him. I'm guessing he finished. About 5 minutes later, the decorator texts him, "Can I just ask why you fired me?" And the husband obviously replies, "Because you've just had a wank in my bed." To which the painter replies, "Okay, no worries, I won't charge you for today's work." He then went on to paint the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. Story 17. I was the one caught in camera a few times. A family who had bunnies caught me on camera booping noses to the beat of the song I was singing. Little bunny foo-foo hopping through the kitchen, picking up all the lettuce and munchy munch. A different family saw me get f***ing tackled by their 95 lb Mastiff puppy, and they immediately called me to make sure I didn't have a concussion since I just kinda laid there for a while. I was fine. I just got the wind knocked out of me. Yet another different family saw me reading a book to their kids, and later complimented all the voices I make. I had no idea they could hear audio, and I got so embarrassed, since I really did go all out. Story 18. Not a nanny cam, but a vid. My sister-in-law sat the camera down thinking she turned it off. I have over an hour of her teasing my toddler in a mean way with candy and popsicles. She started telling him that he would get some, then held it just out of reach. She then ate it in front of him making sounds. She was also calling him mean and weird names like Turd Muncher and Ricky Retardo. The camera got all the audio, but only some video. At the end of the video is when we got home. When I confronted her with the video, she started claiming I doctored it. I was a liar, and hated her because she was prettier than my wife. She is not. That was the last time she was allowed around either of our kids unsupervised. She was the sister-in-law for 10-ish years, and is now the crazy Karen ex-sister-in-law. I can't have a presence on social media because she attacks me all the time, says lies, etc. I am also estranged from my brother because of her. 10 years of her warped his perception of our family. He still thinks some of the whacked-out things she accused our dad, sister, other brother, and various other family members of. No reasoning has convinced him of the truth, not even the thought that if video evidence refutes some of the claims, then all can be considered suspect. I may get comments and advice of what I could do, but in the end you can't fight crazy, and sometimes life is just not fair. The only thing I have done to make things better is ignore her. She eventually just starts attacking someone else, like an annoying yipping dog. That just needs to annoy. As for my brother, I hope time will help to fix things. I also think that he might just be more like her than I think. Birds of a feather fly together. Story 19. We have a Ring doorbell, and we put out snacks for delivery drivers. My parents were in town and stayed a week over to sit out dogs while we went out of town for the week. We get notifications on our phones when the doorbell senses movement, of course. 2 or 3 times a day, the notification was my mother going out to the delivery drivers, snack stash, taking Little Debbie cakes. We had a good laugh about it, but never told my mom. We knew. She gets embarrassed easily. However, same week we were gone, we also had recently put in a couple of inside cameras before we left. One is in our living room facing the couch. It was new to us, so we were checking out the footage from our phones on and off a couple of times during the week. One time, my diabetic dad was sitting on the couch binge-eating the kids' Cheetos. My dad does not get embarrassed easily, so I had to say something over the two-way speaker. I said, "Hey Dad, last time I checked, those were not diabetic-friendly Cheetos." My dad replied, "You, and you will need to buy more Cheetos. Love my dad so much."